I've worked with scores of people who have been hopeless cases.
And I was going so fast I didn't have time to make an adjustment to the check, and consequently I slammed into the end boards, damaging my neck.
The neck injury was a bad one. The collision damaged his spinal cord. He is one of more than 100,000 victims of spinal cord injuries in the United States.
One of the star students, clients, when I was still doing psychotherapy, is Michael Schwass, who came to me as a quadriplegic. He could barely sit in a wheelchair propped up. He was mostly on a striker board, which is a board where they turn you every hour or two so that the blood continues to move, and that's the way he lived. When he was turned down, that's when he would eat, because they would feed him through a hole in the striker board where his face fit into, and that was his life. An athlete of magic proportions before that, bright boy.
Dream of walking one more time?
Yeah.
You think you will?
Of course. I've known all along. Just gonna take time and work, but I have no doubt. It takes me the rest of my life, I'll do it.
Came to me at 19 or 20 with quadriplegia, having traveled around the United States with his big family, one brother and many sisters, looking for someone who would take him on, because he fully and truly believed he could walk, and that this was not going to stop him.
Well, the doctors told me that whatever I regained below the level of my injury would be a bonus. They told me that it was unlikely that I'd be able to move my arms, and it was highly unlikely if I'd ever be able to walk again.
That was considered the most honest and practical thing to tell him, that he would be paralyzed from the neck down for the rest of his life, a quadriplegic. And the sooner he accepted that reality, the faster he would rebuild a productive life in a wheelchair.
They didn't give me any encouragement, and the fact that they have the facilities to work out in, I didn't feel they gave me the proper shot at trying to come back and trying to walk again.
He was wrong by all medical standards. He was wrong by all psychological standards. He hated doctors because physicians all across the territory said, "You are a quadriplegic forever. There's nothing anybody can do, period." When he got to me through two of his sisters who had known me in other regards, other work I was doing. And they said, we got to take you to him. So they brought me to him. And I listened to his story, a sad story, as he hung like a Stephen Hawking kind of picture in the wheelchair, hanging, but his eyes worked, he could look at me. And he told me his story and his intense hatred of medical world, and that nobody would believe that he could walk. And so I was charmed by him. And in my office I had a radio, a portable radio, and I turned it on. And I said, "Michael, where is that sound coming from?" Well, he looked at me like a little bit funny. Bright boy, he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Where is that sound coming from?" He said, "From Chicago, I guess. Radio station." I said, "Yes, but how's it getting in that box?" Now, I wasn't talking about his malady. I wasn't talking about anything as far as he was concerned. He didn't know what I was doing. And he was a little annoyed, and he said, "Radio waves." I said, "You mean there's some unseen radio waves magically getting that sound into that box?" He said, "Yes, it's radio waves." They said, "Can you see them?" He said, "No, nobody can see them." So I reached for the radio and I turned it loud until it was deafening. I said, "Are you telling me that I can amplify those radio waves right here in my office by turning up a knob He said, "What are you saying?" I turned the radio down and I said, "We're done for today. Go home. And don't come back unless you figure out what this means." So he went home. Within hours, he made another appointment, and he came back, and he said, "Are you telling me that there are ways that my brain," he had it all down, he said, "there are ways that my brain waves that are not reaching my lower body, my intentions and my brain waves, I have other ways of reaching my muscles and my organs?" I said, "What do you think?" He said, "I think that makes sense." And that's when we started to work. I had very expensive biofeedback machinery at the time. I hooked him up to it. I hooked his body up to it. None of it worked. The machines were so expensive that, so sensitive, that they could pick up the slightest vibration in human energy, in all regards. Vibrations in the muscles, the galvanic skin response, skin conductivity. The only machine that worked was the EEG, the electroencephalogram, on his head. I could see his brain waves. But that's all. Nothing below his chin worked. 3 years later, we got the first bleep on his thigh when I asked him to kick me. And it went brrr, and we knew then that there was muscular movement, and his mind was creating that muscular movement. And it was there very shortly. The trajectory was, 3 years was like this, like this, like this, and then the trajectory was like this. And shortly thereafter, he walked for Channel 7 and all of the TV stations in Chicago. He walked across his lawn with a lawnmower. So, are there people who can overcome? Yes, that's why I say in this particular age, in this particular time, at this particular level of human belief, most of that's not possible. No. But it's coming. I'm just ahead of the curve right now in acting this way, and I'm way ahead of the curve in thinking this, but it's coming. And psychology will be extremely important in this. This will be the new medicine. Michael was invited to a conference of neurosurgeons in Florida. They did not believe anything that I've just told you. So he was invited to speak. So the way we did it, he went in his wheelchair, hanging, and he spoke to the neurosurgeons and he told them what he was doing. Then he got up out of his wheelchair and he walked across the stage for them. The audience, there were 50 neurosurgeons in the audience. They got up out of their chairs and they stormed the stage. And they examined him from head to foot, believing that he had been wired up and he was operating through robotics. And they had all already had his diagnosis and his chart. They already knew what he was. So that's just one of the stories, many stories. It's one of the reasons I wrote the book, to inspire people like him. One of the things that was holding him back was his great rage. We needed to fix that. And it took a long time to fix that rage. He had a major, in our terms, in human terms, a major injury. He needed major connections, mental connections, in order to make the changes necessary. We needed to fill in all of the blanks between quadriplegia and walking. And that took time and a lot of imagery. Yes, he had that kind of intensity, and I had the same, and so it was a win-win for us.
Did you ever doubt?
That's a good question. Maybe I did, but I don't think of myself that way. I never let that enter my mind because it's a weakness and it's communicated to my client as well.